Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to E20 Zone TV. It's me, Jay, here. Do not adjust your device. Our hat-wearing leader is enjoying a very well-deserved holiday. So you've got me here to talk to you about a very big, very Tomas Soucek-shaped problem that we've currently got at West Ham. Before we jump into it, please like the video, subscribe to E20 if you're not already subscribed, and do let me know in the comments what your opinion is on this. Are you happy with the way that we've started the season? Are you happy with 4 points from 4 considering who we've played? And are you happy with the kind of tactics that we've employed? For me, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of how I feel about the start of the season. I think what we'll do is we're going to go through sort of the lineups, how we've approached the games, and what that's kind of resulted in. If we start at the beginning where we started, this was the lineup in the first game against Aston Villa. Now, this was the first time that we saw Paqueta sort of drop deep next to what was Guido Rodriguez in that game. Alvarez was injured, Rodriguez made his debut, but we saw Tomas Soucek push further forward into the number 10 role, which is not a role that I ever remember him playing for West Ham. He'd obviously started his career playing as sort of a double pivot with Declan Rice and was initially the player that bombed on from the deep line role and arrived late in the box. Ultimately, in his first full season playing that role, he got himself into the Premier League team of the season. I think he scored 10 Premier League goals that year. And he was an absolute revelation, and we were all saying how fantastic he is. But as Declan Rice started to push further forward, his impact on games started to reduce. And so this was the first time that we had really seen this kind of formation, but that resulted in Paqueta actually dropping back into a deeper position to get on the ball, and Soucek playing effectively as like a second striker, a shadow striker behind Michail Antonio. And it was a bit of a surprise, to be honest. Ultimately, he did what was asked of him, which was get in the box, cause a bit of chaos. I think he won the penalty for us to equalise. We obviously went 2-1 down, and then he missed a glaring chance at 2-1 in like the 95th minute, and he should have equalised. So putting the result to the side, he actually kind of did what was asked of him in that game. We lost the game, but I kind of looked at it in the sense of it was a very pragmatical lineup from Lopetegui, in that he hadn't had an awful long time to kind of embed what we thought was going to be this new kind of style. Granted, he had pre-season with most of these players, but he hadn't had Lucas Paqueta, he hadn't had Jared Bowen, both were away on international duty. Guido Rodriguez, again, had only been signed for a short while. So that's 3 really important players there that hadn't really played. Michail Antonio had been away on international duty as well. I think Tomas Soucek had as well. So I kind of looked at this and went disappointed with the result, but I understood the reason he did that, especially considering Paqueta dropping in deep, which is what happened in the second game as well. If we look at the lineup here, the same lineup as the first game, the same kind of idea. Soucek pushed on, Paqueta dropped in deep, and he and Guido Rodriguez were looking to pick the ball up from the back 4 and then progress it down the pitch. If that's the direction that we were going to go in, I understand why he's pushed Tomas Soucek further forward. And he was rewarded for this decision in the Crystal Palace game, because we need someone like Paqueta who's going to get in those deep areas, who's going to pick the ball up, and who's going to try and make something happen. Now, I will admit Paqueta hasn't had his greatest start to the season. He struggled in the second half of last season and hasn't necessarily shown that he's still the type of player that we're used to seeing in a West Ham shirt. Obviously, a lot's going on in the background. And now he's moved in from the left-hand side and is playing centrally again. But what he does do is when Paqueta drops in, he plays on the half turn and he immediately looks for Jared Bowen. 2 players that know how each other work, know how each other play. And when Kudus tucks in from the left-hand side, another problem in itself, he gets in the game and he tries to find Bowen as well. So we've got a real good chemistry between those 3 players. But what happened in this game ultimately is we struggled in the first half. It was absolute chaos. It was back to front to back. It was like a basketball game for about half an hour. One that we didn't necessarily get the better of, and we were lucky to only be at 0-0 going in at half time. Ultimately, the tactic of having Tomas Soucek next to Mikel Antonio worked. Ball drops to Tomas Soucek. He bangs it in the back of the net. 1-0. We score very quickly afterwards. Again, from a ball up to Jared Bowen. He cuts inside. He scores. We win the game 2-0. And it looks like it's a tactical masterstroke. If you were to just look at a game on stats and on the result, we're happy, right? Well, I mean, ultimately, football is a game of results. So if you win the game like that, if you win every game like that, no one's going to have any criticisms. But when you look at the context of what happened in the following games, we won't talk about the Bournemouth Cup game. It was a bit of a nothing game. New players were playing. We won't even talk much about the City game, where Tomas Soucek didn't play. Now, he didn't play. We played the 2 sixes of Alvarez and Rodriguez, I think, and ultimately looked a better team, despite the fact that we were backs against the wall for the first 45. But in the second half, we were brilliant. It's probably the best 45 minutes of football West Ham have played this season. So that goes a long way to showing we changed our approach. I think we got it wrong in the first half in that game, but the approach changed. We switched it at half time, and again, we were just a better side again because we were playing this style of football that Lopetegui seems to want to play. Be pretty solid defensively, but go forward with real intent. Now, that didn't work in the game at the weekend against Fulham. And the more I think about this, the more frustrated I become. I think we were probably all baffled by the fact that we went with this lineup. When you consider we'd gone with Rodriguez in the 6, Paqueta sort of as a deep line playmaker, and Souček at a 10. To then go with 2 sixes and Souček at a 10, effectively 3 defensive midfielders, playing against Fulham. No disrespect to Fulham, but this is the kind of game where, as West Ham United, this new West Ham United that I thought wanted to really set their stall out and, in Julian Lopetegui's words, not set a limit on our ambitions. You'd think this is the kind of game where we would really go out and try and dominate a team like Fulham. Fulham are not world beaters. Fulham are a good side who are well drilled, but they counter very quickly, very well, and will be solidly in mid-table, I think, this season. They won't go any further than that. I think they've got the capability of finishing maybe 10th or 11th, but I don't see them going any further than that. We at West Ham United are realistically targeting a European finish this year. So in what world should we be playing Tomas Soucek and Mikel Antonio? Tomas Soucek, who is a defensive midfielder, Mikel Antonio, who is 34 years old, has just played for Jamaica in midweek, and yet those two were leading the line again. And it irritates me because that first 45 minutes against Fulham was dreadful. Like, it was absolutely dreadful. And what irritates me about it the most is we all knew it would be from the lineup. And I'm not one for being negative and for seeing a lineup and writing the team off, because, you know, we're West Ham fans first and foremost. That's not what we're about. But what did irritate me is the problems that we experienced in both the Villa and the Palace game, we didn't learn from. It's almost as if we got lucky with the Palace game, and the result actually made the performance look a lot better than it actually was. So we've reverted to type effectively, and we've gone, Souček's going to get far forward. He's going to play near Mikel Antonio. We're going to lump the ball at him, and we're going to hope for a knockdown, and we're going to hope for a scrappy goal. That's not the kind of away performance that I want to see from this West Ham team. We've got an absolutely embarrassingly good side. So the concept of sacrificing any kind of build-up through the middle by having 2 guys here, Alvarez and Rodriguez, who that's not their game. Alvarez, I thought, actually had a really good game. He picked the ball up. He progressed it well. He got stuck in. I thought Rodriguez was fine as well. I don't think he was as good as Alvarez, but I thought they both had pretty good games. Souček, and this is not a criticism on Tomas Souček as well, by the way, because this is not his game. He is not a player who is going to influence the game by getting the ball to feet. And that showed from the fact that he made 7 passes in this game, and he only completed 4 of them. Look, like, this isn't news to anybody. I'm sure it's not news to Lopetegui. He is not comfortable with the ball at his feet. He is better positionally as a defensive midfielder and getting into the right positions in the attacking areas as well, and pouncing on either good crosses or balls that drop to him. That is where he's made his name at West Ham United. Not from being a creative number 10 and the guy that plays key passes through. That's just not who he is. So it's no wonder that in the first half, Antonio was poor, Soucek was poor, and we couldn't get Bowen and Kudus into the game. There was a stage in the first half, Emerson had the ball around this area at left back. He and Kudus tried to do something around this kind of area. It didn't work. We had Edson Alvarez who had pushed forward to make the run. Again, not his natural game. No one managed to find a pass that broke through the lines because Fulham were very well drilled. We just rotated it back round, ended up lumping it forward, and Souček and Antonio, who were both stood on Calvin Bassey, by the way, they were both stood at the back post waiting for the same cross, didn't get it, and we turned the ball over and they went down the other end. So these problems, it's not only the fact that we didn't win the game, we got lucky against Crystal Palace, and it actually completely ruins any kind of build-up play amongst our central midfield, amongst our wingers. And Antonio, again, is another conversation that we could have at another time. But ultimately, for me, that is the root of all of our problems. It is isolating our wingers. It is not allowing us to play through the centre. It's not even allowing us to defend well. If you look at the way that the Fulham goal went in, the Fulham goal went in from the fact that they kept attacking us and we kept lumping it forward. And we had no way of actually maintaining possession in the Fulham final third. Fulham absolutely dominated us. And I don't think Bernd Leno I think he rarely touched the ball in that first half. And if he did, it was from a goal kick or from them playing around at the back. We didn't force him to do absolutely anything. And that's the problem. So ultimately, if we're going to play the high line defensively that we seem to have played in the Fulham game and in previous games, it relies on the fact that when you get the ball downfield, it doesn't come straight back at you because mistakes will end up happening. And ultimately, Mavropanos made a howler and played everyone onside. Smith Rowe picks the ball up. Mavropanos hasn't chased back and they score. So I'm not saying that the goal was Souček's fault. I'm not one to just blame the guy for everything. But what I am saying is us not being able to retain the ball in the final third ultimately hurts us in our own defensive third as well. So this is a massive, massive problem that isn't going to go away for West Ham. Because it seems that Lopetegui really likes playing Souček in that position. And either he's a genius and is seeing something that we're not, or he's getting this horrendously wrong. Now, I want to just look at the other side of it and say Souček's been a great servant for this club. He joined at a time when we were in turmoil. He scored some big goals. The goal against Seville springs to mind. Big goals in that relegation season when we were struggling. One against Chelsea, one against Watford. So he's done great things for this football club. For me, the Tomas Souček problem is solved quite simply by he's not starting quality anymore. He doesn't suit the style of play. He doesn't suit number 10. And if we're going to play in the style that Lopetegui wants to play, where he wants to generally play a 6 and a player who gets more of the ball and progresses it, we can't see Souček in that side. I don't think that there's one single combination of midfielders that we can play for every single game. I think in the modern game, you have to look at horses for courses. And that's shown that Lopetegui understands that as a concept in the fact that when we played against Manchester City, he played a completely different lineup and we played a different style. And when it didn't work, we changed the style and Alvarez dropped in deeper as like a quasi fifth defender. So he's shown that he's tactically capable, but he's going to have a steep learning curve in the Premier League, not only from the games and the results that we get, but from how quickly the fans will start turning on him. And I'm not one to do that. I believe that we need to trust the process, and I believe that we will make mistakes that we need to then learn from. But we got to start learning quicker. It seems that we've made the same mistakes in 3 out of our 4 Premier League games now. We've got away with it twice. We got away with it with a 2-0 win against Crystal Palace, and we got away with it with a 95th minute Danny Ings equaliser. So we could easily be on no points off of 4 games, and then the spotlight would be on him. So I'm glad that we've managed to get lucky, and I'm glad that we are kind of where we are. But at the same time, big game coming up this weekend against Chelsea, a game where we've, in recent years, had a lot of success. I think we've won 2 and drawn 1 in our last 3 years against Chelsea at home. So this is a big, important game. David Moyes knew how to get a result in this game. And if Lopetegui's going to start the same lineup as we did against Fulham, I expect the same kind of problems. This is a Chelsea team that have started pretty well. They don't look like they're going to be competing in the top 2 or 3, but they're realistically, if we want to be challenging for those European spots, this is a team that's going to be rivaling us. So your game isn't defined by your season isn't defined by games against Manchester City, which is why I don't really want to talk about that one too much. But your season will be defined by a game like Chelsea at home. We won at home against them last season. We need to win at home against them this season. That's all I'll say about the Chelsea game this week. I'm sure we're going to do a full game preview at some point this week. So do make sure you've got notifications on, and you'll get a notification to tell you when we're going to do that. And hopefully we'll all be talking about a big win on the weekend after the fact as well. Like I say, do let me know in the comments what you think. Is this a problem that can be solved by moving Soucek into a different position? Could you play him deeper? I don't know. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again on the next one.